Hi there, my name is Barbie, and on February 14th, I'm going to be 6 years cancer free from uterine cancer. I want to go back just a little bit because I want to share my story this year on what actually took place on my events to lead me to this journey in the case that it might help other people going through the same thing. So, back in 2013, approximately the week of January 14th, I had some unusual bleeding. It got to the point where it was a little bit weird that I actually contacted the emergency room and they told me that they don't deal with gynecological issues and that I needed to reach out to my gynecologist. I started to panic a little bit and I basically went home and I was in the mindset, you know what, if it stops, I'm okay. So after freaking out in the car, I basically went home. I told my husband I was having some bleeding issues and I went upstairs to lie down. Thankfully, after a couple of hours, the bleeding had stopped. About, I want to say maybe the following Friday, that Friday, I basically went to an eye appointment and I started bleeding again. If I coughed, I was bleeding. If I moved, I was bleeding. I went for an eye exam and the poor guy must have thought, oh my God, I have a loony in my chair. I didn't know what to do. So I called my gynecologist. I was telling them what was going on. They told me it wasn't an emergency and that I needed to book an appointment. Okay. I went back home. I lied in breech position, and then the bleeding had stopped. The following week, I was basically at work, and all of a sudden I coughed, and I felt something very odd. And all of a sudden, I just started passing massive amounts of blood. Called the emergency room again. They said, you need to contact your gynecologist. Okay. Called my gynecologist. They told me it's not an emergency. They said that they'll speak to me on the Monday. Okay. So by this point, this is the Friday, and I'm basically bleeding for 3 days. I didn't know at the point that this was actually hemorrhage. I was bleeding for 3 days straight. I couldn't move. I couldn't cough. I really couldn't do anything. I was immobile for 3 days because no matter what I did, I was just basically gushing blood. By the third day, I basically said to my husband, I think we need to go to the emergency room. It's not something I would normally do, so for me to go, this was a pretty big deal. Something definitely was wrong. We get to the emergency room, and at that point, I was about 100 pounds heavier. And one of the first questions they asked me is, do I have any kids? No. And have I always been heavy? And I was like, what does that have to do with it, me being heavy? So they basically went ahead and they did an ultrasound and they came back and he's like, well, there could be the possibility because you have no kids, you're overweight, that you could possibly have an endometrial cancer. Went in one ear and right out the other. All I was thinking of is how are we going to stop this bleeding and what are we going to do? So they gave me some medicine, like a pill to take for the next 4 days until I could get to see my gynecologist. Made it to the gynecologist. They scheduled me for a DNC to see what was going on. So the day of my procedure, I was across from the receptionist as we registered in, and I'm reading my documentation upside down, and it says Barbie, my name, and it says possible oophorectomy and salpingo-oophorectomy. I didn't know what that means, so when I went back to sit down with my husband, I looked on my phone, and it was like to possibly remove my ovaries. And I remember I said to the receptionist, well, what does that mean? And she grabbed the paperwork and was like, you can't see that. At this point, I called my colleague and my boss, and I told him what was going on. I was with my husband, and I just started crying. I was very emotional because nobody told me the thought that I was going to have to lose my ovaries or anything like that. Like, nothing was discussed with me. I just knew I was going in for a DNC. I went into the nurse when they got me gowned up for the procedure for the DNC, and I asked them, what does that mean? Oh, it's not for you, it's not for you. And I'm like, but it's under my name, not for you. Okay. So I had my procedure. They basically told me I should have the results in about 2 weeks. So I get a phone call. This was on, I think I did my procedure on January 28th, which was a Monday. So I'm figuring 2 weeks. And I got called in 2 days later. I needed to come in. At this point, I knew my worst fears had come of reality. I had my mother-in-law with me, thank God, and she came with me to my appointment, and I went in by myself. And my doctor, who I love, basically sat me down, and she's like, I have good news and I have bad news. And I looked at her and I said, I have cancer, don't I? So she's like, what do you mean? I said, well, I've always had a vision. I was going to have a hemorrhage, and I always had a vision I was going to have cancer. So she joked, and she's like, well, I hope you don't have any visions about me. So basically she said to me, she goes, I have good news and I have bad news. She goes, the bad news is, yes, you have cancer. The good news is it's curable and it's treatable. I don't know about you, but at that moment, just hearing the words that you have cancer, my heart just sank. So she said, are you here with anybody? And I said, yes, I'm with my mother-in-law. So I went into the office to go get my mother-in-law, and she's like, are you okay? And I said, no. And she came in with me, and basically they told me that I would need to have surgery, and I would need to have a total abdominal hysterectomy, and basically get rid of everything. I'd need to get rid of my ovaries, my uterus, my cervix, basically the entire womb, everything. So here I am, 39 years old, just shy of turning 40, and all of a sudden my dreams of having children, everything I ever hoped for, just vanished. My heart sunk into pieces and broke, and I think I could probably say a piece of me kind of died that day. Everything happened so quickly. That afternoon, we were scheduled to go meet with a oncologist surgeon, and he basically sat down with me and explained to me what my options were, which basically was to have the total abdominal hysterectomy, which they call a TAH BSO. It's just easier to pronounce it that way, which basically means you're getting rid of everything. And, he asked me, did I want to have kids? And I said, well, I'm almost 40 years old. The likelihood at this point is probably going to be minimal. And, with I had stage 1 uterine cancer, which means it didn't get outside of the lining, thankfully. So they caught it early enough, but that he probably wouldn't recommend that I have kids. So I'm like, okay, let's do what we need to do. So they scheduled me for surgery on Valentine's Day. So while everybody celebrates Valentine's Day thinking about love and warm wishes, I'm basically thinking of the day that my uterus and my hopes and dreams and everything of being a mom basically vanished. It took me probably the past, I want to say 2.5, 3 years till I could actually watch a TV show without crying, or seeing kids without crying on TV, because my biggest dream and my biggest wish in life was to be a mom. I thought it was something that I would have been good at. But you know what? These were the cards that I was dealt with, and I was just going to do what I have to do. So February 14th of 2013, I had my surgery at a hospital here in Palm Beach. They were wonderful. I had my family there, my mother-in-law, my friends from work. And then I was off work for 6 weeks, and it was probably one of the loneliest times of my life. It's a time that I really don't want to go back to, but learning now what I do and how I dealt with things, I want to be there for people. I never want anyone to ever be alone. I don't want people to ever have to go through anything alone the way that I felt that I did. My parents were there for me, and my sister, of course, and my husband, but, for a long time, it was hard for him to say the cancer word because, even though they caught it early and it was just a surgery, thank God, the word cancer is still a word that sticks with me every single day. If I all of a sudden don't feel right, or all of a sudden, let's just say if I have a bleed or I have something, is my cancer back? I think that's just something that's going to live with anybody the rest of their life. 2 years after my hysterectomy, I decided to do bariatric surgery because they told me it was because I was heavy. So I did take off over 100 pounds. I mean, I've gained back 20, 25 pounds, dealing with other stresses that go on with everyday life. But I'm extremely proud of where I am and who I've become over these last 6 years. I wouldn't change anything. I hate the words everything happens for a reason, but it does. It's made me a better person. It's made me appreciate life more. It makes me value every person that I see, and it makes me want to do good for everybody. I just hope watching this video, if someone else doesn't feel right or has something that's odd or doesn't really know what they should do, that they definitely go and get it checked out. We only have one life, and you have to embrace it and live it to the fullest and live as if it's your last day. The words that I take with me every day are that I'm going to make the rest of my life the best of my life. And because of my parents, my sister Susie, my husband Shane, and my mother-in-law Doreen being there for me on those days, I'm forever thankful. And of course, my gift of life family. I am where I am today. I appreciate and value everything. And I know this is a long, boring video, so I apologize. But you know what? 6 years is a big feat, and may no one ever have to go through this. And just know that there are caring people out there, and that anybody that needs somebody can always turn to somebody. If nobody has anybody, just call me. I'll be your vice, because that's really what I'm about. So happy pre-Valentine's Day to everybody. And may your upcoming Valentine's Day be one with your loved ones. May it be healthy, and may it be everything that you guys wish for, because I know I wished for it, because I'm still here, and I'm saying happy and Valentine's Day for all those that couldn't make it. So this one's for everybody. Have yourselves a wonderful night. Bye.